Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of TBR. And I'm George Binns. Tonight we're going to talk about the Ward 3 School Committee race. And to help us understand it, we have one of the contenders, Geraldine Cahill.
Hi, thank you for having me,
Really,
George.
Gerrie.
Gerrie, yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
So what makes you want to run?
I think that some of the hard questions need to be asked around what's going on with the school committee right now, what's going on in the schools, staffing issues. I think a lot of stuff about just equity. Kids that are, making sure our staff feels like they're supported in the schools, making sure that our staff feels valued in the schools. I think all those are really big issues. And I think that largely we've addressed them in different degrees, but we've never gotten down to the, when people, I've negotiated a couple of contracts with the city as a union representative, and I feel like that oftentimes we're not understanding that it's about funding. It's about taking care of the people that take care of our children.
Yeah.
It's about understanding that we need to value our staff and we need to make them feel valued. It's wonderful to say we value you without it being evident on the other end by supporting quality staff, enough staff, tenured staff. We hired, I think there was 50 some odd new educators that came into the city, a combination of paras and teachers. That's wonderful that we have them, but on the other side, we lost a great deal of teachers that we didn't address. And some of those teachers went to communities where they went there to sort of boost their pensions, because it's the last 3 years of their pension, of their work life that dictates their pension. So if they're making less money here, and they go to a community, let's say Salem, and they make 10% more, their pension's going to be more. So I think that staff is kind of like playing those odds and looking at what's to their advantage when they leave, and you can't blame them for that. It's the nature.
Yeah.
So I think that largely I'd like to look out for them. I'd like to look more into the quality of education. I think we do a wonderful job of offering alternative programs to our kids. We have alternative schools. We have enrichment centers. We have a lot of cultural stuff that's going on. There's some great things happening in Beverly, and I think we just need to make sure that we expand on that and that no one's left out of that picture. So I guess I really want my voice to be heard. I want some hard questions asked, and I want people to have answers to those. And I don't think currently that a lot of people are asking those hard questions, and I'm not quite sure why.
Well, that's one of the issues, I guess, with the school committee, that with the big shuffle back in the, I guess it was about 1980, 1990, sometime in there, they changed the whole concept of who's in charge, and took away power from the school committee, that they no longer have a budget that can't be touched.
Right.
And at the same time, it put more authority in the hands of the superintendent. Mm-hmm. So it's a different kind of environment. And I guess what I'm trying to understand is, how do you think you can influence this new environment of the school committee, where the school committee is more advisory than it is authoritative?
Right, and I don't know so much that it's trying to change the climate as it's trying to raise awareness that we do have teachers that are leaving because they don't feel valued in the community. I don't think one voice can change anything per se, but I think one voice can make a difference as far as people knowing what's going on. Some of the hard questions: why did we lose staff? How many staff did we lose? Mm-hmm. Those need to be answered so we sort of understand that what's going on in our school system as a whole. So, we can speculate over why things are happening, but there's data out there someplace that's telling us, and we need to have that made available to us. And I think that's why those questions aren't being asked. They're not being asked when you go to a school committee meeting.
Well, when one of the blogs I follow has a teacher on it that writes quite often about what's it like to teach in the middle school. Mm-hmm. Which I think is probably the most challenging bunch of them all.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And what he describes it as it's more like riot control or crowd control.
Yeah.
And the implications I get from that is the teacher may have a problem with certain students, and how do you address a problem with a couple of students when you got 20 or 30 others that you're also responsible for?
Right.
And I guess the implication is that these kids that are troublesome aren't being taken care of by the administration. So I guess one of the issues is, how do you change the philosophy of, okay, teacher, you got the class, it's all yours, and get more involvement with the administration and what to do with these kids. Like you mentioned, there are special classes.
Yeah.
Are there enough of them?
And that needs to be addressed. And there may well be enough of them. And I think that in so many ways, people's hands are tied. And I'm not saying that even administratively that their hands aren't tied about what can and can't be done to be able to rectify situations like that. But I do know sometimes it feels as though there's no consequence or no natural occurrence that happens when some of these things happen. For example, a brand new bus, brand new electric bus, and 600 miles on it, and somebody writes on the seat with marker, right? They didn't destroy the seat. I went out and afterwards cleaned it all off. There's no level of accountability. So that child isn't held accountable for it. They may be told, okay, well, now you have to sit up at the front of the bus, and then they get disruptive at the front and they get moved to the back. That's what I see on my level. I can only imagine when that child goes into the classroom and something happens and they destroy a piece of property or they act inappropriately. People's hands become tied, and well, we can send you down to the principal's office, much like we did with our kids when they were younger. Send to the principal's office. The principal does the best that they can do, and then they send them back to the classroom. Yeah. I'm not sure what the answers are there, but I think that we need to explore, like, how do we make teachers feel like we have their backs?
Well, I think one other concern is you send the kids to the principal's office. Do you ever know that they get there?
That they get there, yeah.
And I know a couple of teachers that I meet at the Y, and they talk about certain kids that are runners.
Yep.
That as soon as they're out of that classroom, they're gone.
Yeah.
And again, the school system is responsible for them once they show up in the morning till they send them home in the evening. And how do you handle these kind of situations? And I think this is one of the changes in the character of the system as to what the kids are expecting.
Right.
And you start to look at some of the characteristics of the school system, and there's two sources that I look up. One is the NICH, N-I-C-H. They grade the schools, and they say that Beverly's a B+ school overall. And then there's U.S. News and World Report says Beverly's got a 67% rating. Mm-hmm. So you get different opinions on the school. And one of the curious things that I came across is that there are only 36% of the students that have ever taken an AP course, and yet we're touting a school that's getting students ready to go to college. Yep. And only 27% of the students have actually passed an AP course. So what kind of preparation are they getting? I guess, and that's one of the issues I think that I think a lot of parents are concerned about. Mm-hmm. You move into a town, you buy a house, and one of the main reasons to buy a house is
education, because
you got a good education system for your kids.
Right. And I think Beverly has so many opportunities, and I look at it and I don't think in a lot of ways we're different from many of the other surrounding communities. I think that some of our MCAS scores aren't what I think that they should be. Certainly, our the numbers that you're quoting as far as the colleges and AP courses, I can see all that. I think we encourage kids to do it, but I also think on the other side of it that we also have to take a look at some of our kids aren't college-bound kids. You know, the trades were really popular at one point in time, and then the trades became only something that the underachievers were supposed to go into.
Yeah.
Everyone else went to college. Now to get into the trade school is really quite a process. To go to the tech is you know, there's an interview process, and there's grading, and there's letters of reference. So I think I don't put so much stock in the AP classes and what the enrollment is. I think that you should look at our kids achieving what they need to achieve to move on to their chosen field or their chosen career.
Well, that gets to be another kind of situation that used to go to the senior center, and they used to have this breakfast with seniors. And 1 month, the seniors from the high school would go over to the senior center
I remember that.
and have coffee and pastry and cereal, whatever. And the next month, the seniors from the senior center would go over to the high school. So it's a home and home
Yep.
series. And got talking with two of the young ladies, not at the same time,
Right.
but they were interested in going to college to become veterinarians.
Yep.
Okay. So I asked the obvious question, well, why didn't you go to Essex Tech? And one of the young ladies said, well, I didn't want to leave my friends. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a reasonable thing.
In high school, that's a reasonable thing.
Yeah.
Right.
And the other young lady said, I didn't know you could go to college from Essex Tech. So I started to wonder, now, this is an isolated incident. What are you talk about the classroom, where does the kid get to know where this is going,
Yeah.
kind of thing?
And I think back when my kids were in school, guidance counselors played a really big role in that. They played a big role in sorting out, you know, what your desire was. You know, did you feel like you wanted to go on to college? Did you want to go into a trade? How did you want to go from here? I think that they're not afforded that opportunity to that degree anymore, because I think there's so many other things that the school system is dealing with, and they could be educational plans and IEPs. It could be, you know, the social emotional end, the cultural end, the English as a second language kids, and there's so many more moving pieces now that I don't think that a guidance counselor can sit down and talk about your career choices and give it the time it really needs to help a child explore that. I'm not sure where we do that and how we plug that in, but I think it's definitely something we need to look at.
Well, I think that's one of the basic ideas. You're going to school to learn something. And one of the things that struck me is that one of the most important things is to learn how to learn. Because basically, I know when I got out of engineering school, they told us that in 5 years, half of what you learned is going to be obsolete.
Yep.
And nowadays, I think it's happening even quicker.
Quicker.
So that's part of the process, that this is what you're learning to do, is to learn. And at the same time, I'm not sure that, well, I knew when I left high school, I thought I knew what I was doing, and I find out that I was missing an awful lot of stuff in terms of what's the world really like?
Yep.
What am I getting into? So, again, I think there should be a stronger role for guidance, or the classroom teacher perhaps needs to spend more time with, okay, this is what this is good for.
Right.
This is what it means in the real world.
In the real world.
And it's not just a narrowly focused, you got an AP test you got to take,
Right.
or a MCAS
test,
MCAS test you got to take,
Right.
and that's where we're going to get you to. But after you've passed that, what do you do with
what
it?
happens with it, right? And I think that those are the same questions from back when you and I were in school. Is it, you know, the questions and the focus may change, but what you do with stuff afterwards has always been a mystery. You know, we tell kids, you know, well, I didn't think I needed typing in school. Now, if you can't type, you're lost now in today's world with everything being email and electronic.
Yeah.
Typing was a moot point to me because I wasn't going to be a secretary.
Yeah.
You know, I think that when we watch these kids follow through stuff, we just have to give them the best that we can give them at that moment in time to meet the needs that you know that we see coming at them in the not too distant future, because I think, like you said, things change from today to tomorrow.
Yeah. And one of the other ones that's surprising, I was reading the paper a while back, and the previous governor was giving away money to the various cities and towns. And I was really impressed with Peabody, and they got a grant, and they were working on students who were interested in health services.
Yep.
And they got one of these dummies, these imitation patient dummies. And there's some other things that were happening like that. And yet Beverly didn't get anything. Wasn't even in the running. So the question, I think, how do you get something like that going and get an interest in different programs? I think the Plan Beverly, when it came out a couple of years ago, was said that 90% of the people that work in Beverly work in the health industry.
Yeah.
So like the shoe used to be the business in town, health industry seems to be significant.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not smart enough to know what's going on in this building, but is there anything being done for that kind of thing?
And I think that's some of the questions that we have to ask. I don't know the answer to that. I haven't explored that. I think that those are the questions that I would like to see as a school committee, that we ask the superintendent, and that we talk about the possibilities of different programs that we haven't yet explored. Culture of diversity. I think we have done an amazing job in Beverly of being able to address diversity and support kids of different cultures and make sure that we acknowledge the things that are important to them. I think we just need to do it on a bigger scale. I think we need to acknowledge that kids learn differently, and we see that and we work with it. But I don't know the answers. I just know that there are questions there, and we can't get the answers until somebody asks the question.
Yeah, according to Nish, Beverly's got a B- in diversity.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would have thought it was better than that, to be honest with you.
Well, again, this is one of the other anomalies that bothers me. You look at the demographics for the city, and it's about 10% minority.
Yep.
9 point something. And the school did a survey, and they came up with 25% diversity.
Okay.
We are minorities. So that I don't understand. How you get that much.
I wonder if maybe that a lot of that is kids that go to alternative programs. That the overall diversity in the community is this, but then we talk about private schools and whatever that come into play.
Well, that brings up the other interesting question. What do you mean by diversity? The usual story is, well, it has something to do with a different color, whether you're white, tan, yellow, black, which don't know. And yet there are people who have a different attitude, different perspective.
And that's what I was going to say. I think diversity spans much greater than the color of skin anymore, and ethnicity. I think we talk about, our just in general, our sexual preferences, sexual diversities, just religious diversities, just the way the kids in general are very different in many aspects, how they believe, how they conduct themselves. So I think it's sort of acknowledging that there's a place at the table for everybody, and how do we make that place at the table? And that's where what I consider diversity to be, is that this table fits everybody.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter whether you're a girl or a boy, or you're black or you're purple or you're whatever, that we're going to make a place for you, because we are a diverse community. We accept that people are different.
Yeah.
And that's what I look at diversity as being. When I see kids, and I drive children on a bus that are from kindergarten all the way through high school, they don't see the things that we see as adults. You see somebody come on and you may judge them by their clothes, you may judge them by their speech or whatever. Kids don't generally, and on this very fundamental level, don't judge anybody else. They're just happy that they judge whether this person is kind to them or not kind to them. Not nothing else really matters. And I think that's what we need to promote, is that kindness and respect is what we need to look for, not what color you are or what sexual orientation you have, but are you kind and respectful?
Yeah. Well, we get into some of the other issues that you start to look at the scores that U.S. News and World Report reported, and math proficiency is 42%, reading is 65%, science proficiency is 76%, which is kind of good.
Amazing, yeah.
Yeah, and graduation is 93%.
Okay.
So you start to think about a lot of emphasis is now on STEM.
Yeah.
And is that the only thing to teach? And is there an overabundance of focus on STEM, and yet what are they going to do with it? If you're going on to engineering school, fine.
That's fine, right.
But
And I think that varies from child to child too. If you ask me about math today, I don't know if you watch math. I have a really hard time figuring out how they do things with the whole. Division is backwards and multiplication is in a graph, and so I think that math is one of those ever-changing fields. Whatever you did here has changed. Remember new math?
oh yeah,
We've had new math. There's been 1,000 times over since new math. So I'm not quite sure that there isn't a place for it. So I think when you talk about the proficiency, I think it's that it changes so quickly that what you teach a child in the primary grades, by the time they get to high school, there are fundamental changes in it.
oh yeah. Well, the other thing too is what I think they ought to be teaching is, I remember way back when I was on the school committee, this is back in the dark ages, I was pushing to teach calculus.
There you go.
Because that was the thing back then.
Yep.
Nowadays, it ought to be linear algebra.
There you go.
Because
Yeah.
computers can't do calculus, but they do a marvelous job at linear algebra. But the other half of this story is we're down to the last 5.
Okay.
So it's your turn to tell the constituents
Thank you.
why they should vote for you.
I would hope that people would vote for me because I've been involved in the community for a very long time. I have a unique perspective in having dealt with kids for 25 years I've driven a school bus. I've watched them sort of grow and I've nurtured them, and I feel like I've been on the ground level with kids as they come into school. I've worked with the unions, so I have a really good perspective on what our staff and what our employees are thinking and feeling. I've worked on contracts, so I have a good idea of sort of what some of the issues are that come into play when we're dealing with negotiating a contract. I think I work pretty effectively with anybody that I've worked with throughout the system, not without glitches, with certain things, but for the most part, I've worked pretty well with both administration, with staff, with my peers. I've had children in the system. I currently still have a child that goes to the high school that's in care with me. So I've been involved with the school systems for 30 some odd years in every level, from my own children to my grandchildren to foster children. So I think I have a pretty good perspective on what's going on. The other thing is that I'm pretty well versed on other schools other than the ones in my neighborhood. I visit them frequently. I know the staff, I know the administration. Ward 3 is one of the unique communities in Beverly that has children that attend every single school in town. Because of the way they're districted, we have kids that go to all 5 of the elementary schools. We have kids that go, obviously, to the middle school and the high school. So we're really we're all over the town. Whereas, some communities, their kids only go to the neighborhood school or go to the school around the corner. We are ingrained within all the school communities, and I think that makes a big difference, that we need to not only, I don't need to reach out to one school community, but I think it's important that anybody who's representing Ward 3 reaches out to all the school communities, attends their PTO meetings, is aware of what's going on, not just in their own neighborhood, but across the city, and can give a good representation and good support to all the communities and all the children. So that's why I think that I would be an appropriate person for that position.
Great.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you for joining us this evening, and
This was
wish you the best of luck.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
And ladies and gentlemen, thanks you for joining us. And again, if you have some concerns or questions, my email address is at the end of the credits. And if you have even more of a position and you want to point at a position at the table, and we can make room for you. And thanks for joining us, and we'll see you later.